All right, so this one is marriage dying? Let's get into it. It's a great question.
There's been a general decline in marriage, but behind that general decline is a more interesting story. I think it's important we try to understand why people do get married in the first place. For some people, of course, it's a religious matter, it's a covenantal relationship. I think for many more people, there's an economic element to it. There's obviously the companionship and love. You fall in love and want to spend the rest of your life with someone. So there's a romantic element to marriage. And another reason was because they got pregnant. The so-called shotgun wedding. There was a sense that if you were bringing a new life into the world, that should be done within marriage. And there's probably a bit of status signaling too, sometimes, and this may be more true today than it was in the past, that being married is a way of signaling success and status within a
We all remember the old stories about the shotgun marriages and the the status symbol, right?
society. And so there's a blend of reasons between religion, romance, economics, and status that have traditionally led people to the marital state. The old model of marriage was, for the woman, it was an economic necessity, particularly if she was going to have children, to be with a man who would be the provider. And obviously that has hugely changed now. And for the man, it was a way to attach himself to children. If he was going to have children, he had to do that with a woman. She
And that's a big thing for men too, is children, being able to have children. And yeah, the old traditional ways was a man did that through getting married. And that has, I think for the most part, has been dissolved.
was going to raise the children. But if she was doing that, he had to provide for them too. And so there was this complementarity to that traditional view of marriage, which of course was founded on a very deep inequality between men and women. That was a driving force of the women's movement, including people like Gloria Steinem, saying the point is to make marriage into a choice rather than a necessity, and to actually free women from the economic bondage, as they would have put it, of marriage. And that inequality is what's been successfully shattered gladly by.
But a good question about that is marriage an economic bondage for women, or is it an economic bondage for men? Think about that one. If men are paying, generally speaking, right, men have to pay alimony and child support. And generally speaking, if there's a divorce, or whether or not the marriage works out, usually it's the man providing most of the support, sometimes not all. There's always exceptions to the rule. But the point is that if the marriage works out, you have the husband and the wife working together. One or both are committing or are contributing to the finances. But if it doesn't work out, usually the financial responsibility falls on the man.
And the women's movement.
All of us must stand up together and say no more.
The very institution of marriage, which is central to human societies, has been fundamentally transformed. It's one engaged into in very egalitarian principles. Women have huge exit power. I think it's important to know that women are twice as likely as men to file for divorce. So women are using exit.
Yeah, that's true. I think the last figure I heard is that out of all of the divorces filed, it's either 70 or 80%, somewhere in there. 70, 75, 80% of divorces, depending on where you're at in the country, um, it's the woman filing for divorce.
Power from marriage. They're not stuck in bad marriages anymore, which is a huge achievement for humanity. But for men, of course, the old role of, well, I'll just provide while you raise the kids, that's out of the window too. And so men's role in marriage and what it means to be marriageable, to use a slightly ugly term from social science, is very different now for men from what it was in the past. And women are looking for something much more than.
Very different. Very different. Very different for men. I think a lot of men are running from marriage. Well, maybe not necessarily running, but they are avoiding it because everything is in the favor of women. When there's a divorce, the woman has been incentivized. The women have been incentivized to divorce men so that they get cash and prizes. They're given cash and prizes by the state or family court. Now, there's going to be people out there that argue, well, yeah, but the woman had to get divorced because she was in an abusive relationship, whatever. Yeah, there's always exceptions. There's always legitimate reasons for things. But generally speaking, women have been significantly incentivized to leave their men.
Than just a paycheck. It's a bit like the kaleidoscope has been shaken and the patterns haven't quite settled yet. You see lesbian and gay couples being able to opt into marriage. Within a couple of years of the Supreme Court decision, we saw 3 out of 5 lesbian and gay couples choosing to get married.
And I also saw statistics on the highest divorce rate out of straight marriages, or marriages between 2 guys or 2 women. The highest divorce rate was marriages between 2 women. So we have to ask ourselves, why is that?
See a big class gap opening up, fewer working class and lower income Americans opting into the institution. What we have is what my colleague Isabel Sawhill calls one of the main class fractures in American society. No one expected that it was Americans with the most choice and the most economic power, and especially the American women with the most choice and economic power, who would be the ones who were continuing to get married and stay married. There's a very slight decline for those, say, with 4-year college degrees, but a really big decline for those with less education. The typical college-educated American woman is almost as likely to get married as her mother was, and if anything, a little bit more likely to stay married than her mother was. So there really hasn't been much.
And you guys, so that's an important point right there. Comment down below and let me know why you think that is. I have my input, but I want to get you all's input on that.
Much of a decline in marriage at all in the top ranks of American society, meanwhile significant declines lower down. One of the other big changes has been a significant shift up in the age of first marriage, up to closer to 30 now. And I think about my parents.
I have seen that too. You see that in society with people not getting married until they're older and older. And there's reasons for that as well. Some of it has to do with economic stability. There's different reasons. There's a multitude of reasons. Sometimes people want to have fun and sow their wild oats, so to speak. Sometimes people want to make sure they're mature enough. Sometimes people want to build their career first and their finances first.
Parents who married at 21, having met at 17, pretty common. And actually, as late as 1970, most women who went to college in the US, which was a minority, of course, but most of them were married within a year of graduating college. That's a world that's very difficult to fathom now, where both men and women are entering the labor market, they're becoming economically successful, they're establishing themselves. In some ways, you do all that first, then you marry.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was just saying. Plus, you got to remember, too, all of this stuff with men and women competing against each other in the workforce, it benefits corporations, it benefits government, it benefits bankers. When you have separate households, for example, like instead of people being married and living together, when you have separate households, you have that many more households out there getting loans for things, cars, college education, mortgages, so on and so on. More people building homes, renting apartments, condos, buying condos, whatever, right? And there's been a lot of people that have said that they wanted to get women into the workforce to tax the other half of the population. So there's many different aspects of this going on, or many different reasons that it is going on.
And so marriage has become more like the capstone. Increasingly, marriage is a signal of everything that has led up to the ceremony, rather than the beginning of a journey. It's as much the end of a journey to a position where people feel they can get married now. We can't tell a single story about marriage in America anymore in the way we could just 40 years ago. We have
I like his comment there too about marriage should be the beginning of a journey, not the end of one. I agree with that 100%.
to tell different stories based on class and race and geography. We've seen this real divide opening up in marriage in the US. Americans now are much less likely to see marriage as something that you have to do to be a complete person or have a good life. Only 1 in 10 Americans now believe that it's essential to be married to have a fulfilling life. That's a huge cultural change. I think what we can safely say is that the model of marriage...
Yeah, 1 in 10 people, so that's only, if my math is right, I think that's 10 out of every 100. 1 out of 10, yeah, so 10 out of every 100 people. Yeah, that's a huge, huge change. And again, if you examine the reasons behind it, there's a multitude of reasons, from cultural to governmental to corporate to financial, all kinds of, you can really get into a really deep dive on all of this stuff.
that was founded on economic dependency of women on men is completely obsolete. Now I think we've created models of the family that are much more equal and much fairer, but maybe not quite as stable in many cases too. And the challenge we all face is to find ways to create more stability in our family life, but without sacrificing the goal of equality, which has animated the movement of the last 50 years. I think what we should be looking to is, how do we have strong relationships within which people can raise kids well? And if marriage has a part to play in that, then great. But there are alternative models around civil partnerships and so on too. What matters is parenting. What matters is how we raise our kids. And I do think that it's quite possible to imagine a renewed future for marriage based around egalitarianism between men and women, but a shared commitment to kids. But I think that's for us to create. If marriage is to survive, it will be in a new model, not a restoration of the old model.
Get smarter, faster.
I mean, I don't know about that last part. It'll be around the new model and not the old model. I don't know. I don't know what other model you could have. Because, I mean, it's possible, yes, but there's a lot of research out there that shows that the traditional marriage, being raised by a father and a mother, that's where kids benefit the most. But anyway, yeah, there's so many things that could be gotten into here that could be discussed. But the obvious points are there is definitely a huge decline in marriage in the West because of the men and women going their own way, so to speak, right? Some people call it the divide and conquer of men and women. But I can tell you, I know many young men that are avoiding relationships, marriage, having children, because they know that the deck is stacked against them, right? They know that if they get involved with a woman, there's a tremendous amount of risk that comes with a tremendous amount of responsibility. And within that responsibility that they take on their shoulders, they have no agency, they have no say-so in anything. So that's a large part of it as well. But I'm going to leave it there. I want you guys to go to the link below. I'm going to leave the link below as promised, as always. And let me know what you think. Just leave your comments in the video. There's a lot more that I could go into, but a lot of these things are sensitive for YouTube. But I think there's some very good things here to consider. One of the points made, I heard somebody talking about feminism and how, I heard this woman saying that she doesn't hate women, she hates feminism because she feels like feminism destroyed women. There's a lot of different opinions on that. Some people think feminism liberated women. Some people think it actually set them back and oppressed them. But all we can do at this point in our society is look at the data, look at the research, and what's happening. Look at the way kids are turning out, One thing I can tell you is that you don't see, with the whole equality thing, right? You don't see women competing for the undesirable jobs, right? Like the blue collar jobs, the garbage man jobs, the power line guy, that has to get up there and expose himself to high voltage, right? Um, you don't see them fighting for plumber jobs and so on and so on. Um, so it appears to be what I heard someone refer to as the corporate cushy jobs. So there's a lot of things that are happening in the West that are and have deteriorated our society. I think that's why there's a lot of men that are, if they're choosing to stay in the United States, they are just, like I said, they're avoiding relationships and marriage and children. The men that still want that, a lot of them that can afford to do so, are going overseas to look for a woman in a multitude of countries. I mean, there's the Philippines, most of Asia, Southeast Asia specifically. Um, Philippines, you've got Vietnam, you've got what else? I'm drawing a blank right now. Thailand, Korea, uh, Japan, and so on and so on. So it's going to be interesting to see how things develop because people respond to incentives. People respond to things that motivate them to do something. And that motivation, the incentives, if they match with human instinct, then those incentives will go very far. And as we watch movements happening, where people are going and why they're going there, we will see, if you look at the incentives for that, you will begin to understand what human psychology is really all about, what human beings really want. Generally speaking, there's always exceptions to every rule, right? But generally speaking, you'll see the flow of human behavior happening. And if you just observe and pay attention, you'll start realizing things on your own. And when you realize things for yourself, that's when, aha, the light goes on, right? You have that aha moment. That's what I was trying to say. So, link is below, and I'm going to leave it there, and we'll see you guys next time. Have an awesome weekend.